I know it said, it showed kind of here.
As an old principal, I'd say there's 3 seats right up here that are waiting for somebody.
I don't like it.
I wouldn't refer to you as an old principal.
Well, I'm not.
Come on down.
I was the first foreman.
No takers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I was taught a long time ago that time, tide, and meal formation wait for no one. So it's past 2 o'clock, and we're going to get this kicked off. Delighted to see so many of you attend this afternoon. We are here to celebrate the donation by Georgia Pacific of the 45-tonner switching locomotive to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historical Society. If you haven't visited our museum before, please take some time to look around and ask questions. Local members are wearing blue vests. Each member has wonderful stories to tell about the museum, and a lot of them are really true. For each of us, the gift of this locomotive is a really big deal. We exist to tell 3 stories with our museum. The first is the dream that became the first passenger and freight railroad built in the late 1880s to connect the Willamette Valley with the Pacific Ocean. Today, when you drive on the Bay Road between Toledo and Newport, you are driving on the old railroad right-of-way for most of the way. The second story concerns the logging railroads into the forest to bring out the big trees. When you drive to Siletz, you are driving on the old railroad right-of-way between Toledo and Camp 12. Actually, if you drive on any straight and flat street around here, it used to be a railroad. Finally, we tell the story of the old logging industry itself, the Army's Pacific Spruce Division during World War I, and the modern logging activities that support the Georgia Pacific Toledo Mill. The 2 locomotives in our collection act as bookends to these stories. Our steam locomotive, which you passed on the way in, One Spot, was purchased new in 1922 by the C.D. Johnson Companies. One Spot served logging operations in the forest until 1959. If you want to hear what that sounds like, we have a device that plays a recording of One Spot bringing a train of log cars into Toledo. It was taken and recorded in 1957. I think it's the best 25 cents entertainment can buy you today. The 45-ton switching locomotive was purchased new in 1951 by the C.D. Johnson Company to switch the local lumber milling operations and later chip car operations. It did so nearly continuously here for approximately 60 years. Visitors sometimes ask whether the railroad is still active. Most Toledo residents can tell you that what time the train arrives each night. For example, last night it was 2:35, and it left at 9 o'clock this morning. The Georgia Pacific Mill operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with up to 3 production lines, manufacturing approximately 2,000 tons of product per day. The Portland and Western Railroad serves the mill with 1 full train each day, bringing in wood chips and used cardboard and taking out finished linerboard and empty chip cars. It is difficult to imagine the mill without the railroad. When the 45-tonner became surplus to mill operations, Georgia Pacific thought of us, and we did not hesitate to accept the offer. We think that the switcher will add to the museum and help us tell our story of railroad and logging history to the next generation. Besides, big railroad equipment is simply fun. On behalf of the Historical Society, welcome to today's celebration of the dedication of the 45-tonner to its second life as a museum artifact. I'm calling upon Deacon Pauline Morrison, who will offer an invocation at this time.
It is an honor to be here to ask God's blessing upon Lokey, as well as upon all of you and upon Toledo. Let us pray. Dear God, Father of all, Creator of all ingenuity, we give thanks for the opportunity to gather to celebrate the 65th birthday of this diesel 45-tonner engine, affectionately known as Lokey, and to offer thanks to Georgia Pacific for gifting it to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historical Society. Lokey saw thousands of hours in the lumber service as it eased the labor of mill workers and railroaders. Today, Lokey rests from that work and begins a new service in the community of Toledo. O God, grant that this locomotive will be a blessing to Toledo. As visitors learn about Lokey and its unique place in Toledo's lumbering and milling history, may they also discover within themselves a deepened appreciation and respect for the ingenuity which gave birth to Lokey and to all engines, and for all inventions which make our lives less labored. And so we give thanks for this 45-tonner, for its preservation as a unique part of Toledo's history, for its role in public education, and for the delight it will generate among the Railroad Museum's visitors. So happy birthday, Lokey. May God bless you and use your presence in Toledo for His glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
We have a set of speakers today, and we're going to start out with Toledo City Manager Jay Boffman. Mr. Boffman has been the City of Toledo manager for about 18 months. I had the pleasure of working with other city councils and recruiting and hiring him during my term as mayor. You're quite welcome. Since coming to Toledo, he and his family have been active in the community and are visitors and supporter of our museum. Mr. Boffman.
I'm here before you today as a representative of the City of Toledo, and I would like to share my gratitude with you all for having the Yaquina Pacific Historical Railroad Society in our town that celebrates the legacy that this railroad has brought to the economic vitality of this area, specifically Toledo. I would like to also voice my appreciation for the Georgia Pacific Mill, for the legacy they have left in our town that they continue to leave, and for the partnership that the city has with them, and look for many more opportunities to cooperate, and I'm appreciative of the economic vitality and the jobs that it creates both for our citizens and the region. And I think Lokey is a great symbol of that of the legacy the mill has had in our town, and I think it's a wonderful gift to have bestowed here and be able to showcase it here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lincoln County Commissioner Doug Hunt. Commissioner Hunt is a longtime resident of Toledo and is currently serving his first full term as the Lincoln County Commissioner. Commissioner Hunt is also a marathon runner who I often see running the uphill portion of First Street as he passes our house. He is an inspiration, but not so much of an inspiration that I'm going to join him running uphill. Commissioner Hunt.
Thank you. Ralph reminded me that as I run through the street here, I'll have another beautiful object to observe and to keep me motivated. But again, thank you to Georgia Pacific for their generous contribution, and I'm really honored to be here as a representative of the county. The county provides some funding to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historical Society, and I think this is a great example. Certainly the total environment here is a great example of the great value that the county gets for our small contribution. Somebody mentioned the fact that Lokey is 65 years old and weighs 45 tons. Well, I have one thing in common with Lokey. I'm 65. I'm not 40 tons. Although at one time I was a little heavier before I ran a few marathons. But I also do have a second thing in common with Lokey. I have a hard time telling if Lokey is coming or going, and I also have a hard time figuring out if I'm coming or going. So again, I have two things in common with Lokey. But as I reflected further on Lokey, I realized that Lokey is actually very contemporary. As I understand it, Lokey is diesel powered and electrical powered, which would make, is the train a he or a she? It would make Lokey a hybrid. So that's pretty contemporary. And I also understand it has wheels that are both, I guess, rubber and metal and four-wheel drive. So it's a hybrid four-wheel drive vehicle. Pretty contemporary. Anyhow, seriously, it's really an honor to be here. I think that's a great symbol of the mill, of the lumber industry, and the culture. It helps us identify with our community and gives us an identity as a community and as a part of Lincoln County. So again, thank you, and I look forward to many more birthdays, sharing many more birthdays with Lokey.
Thank you. Next is Senator Arnie Roblin. Senator Roblin is our representative in the Oregon Senate, completing his first term. Prior to his election to the Senate, he served as a representative from the Coos Bay area and was co-speaker of the House. Senator Roblin is also a retired educator. He was instrumental in working with Lincoln County to provide substantial state funding to attract NOAA to the Port of Newport and to rebuild the railroad line to serve Coos Bay, which looks a lot like the railroad line serving Toledo. Senator Roblin understands the role of railroads and timber in economic development in Oregon. We welcome him today. Senator Roblin.
Thank you. It is really an honor to be here, and for me, this is a part of my history, not necessarily here. I grew up in Port Angeles, Washington, and our trains that came had to take ferries to get over to the Olympics and then ferries back. But right in Port Angeles, the railroad line goes right along the bay because all of our mills were on the bay, and I lived up on the hill of it, and as kids growing up, we would find these places where the bank would open up and there would be big high grass growing somewhere, and then we'd get our cardboard boxes from all over town and we'd slide down the rail, and the issue was always keep off the tracks because they didn't really like you to slide onto the tracks. In the winter, we had these places where we'd get snow, we'd pack it down so we could jump, and we'd jump because there's always this little gully between us and the train. Jump and see if you could make it onto the tracks, you know. And then in the summer, you always took any extra coins you had, mostly pennies, and lined them up on the train tracks, and then went away for a while. And when you came back, you got your smashed pennies, which was always kind of fun to do. So there was always this opportunity as kids to figure out what you're doing. And before I came here, I had another meeting earlier today in Sheridan, and one of the other state senators used to live in Corvallis, and he said, "Oh, you have to tell him my story," because I loved that railroad over to Toledo, because we had 3 or 4 of us, and we'd go jump on the boxcars, and we'd head over to Toledo in the daytime, and we'd run all over. I'd get up on top, and the people on the train would say, "You can't do that, because there's lines going across here, there's tunnels. Keep inside the box if you're going to come." And he said, the one time I came over here, we spent the day in Toledo, had a good time, and then the train went back. We go over to the conductor, we said, "We're going to go back." He said, "Well, we don't have any boxcars, no cars on this train." He said, "Yeah, but we got to get back to Corvallis. It's a long walk." And the guy just smiled and says, "We're going to put a car on for you, and you can have a ride back." And he said, and they actually stopped in Corvallis so we could get off. It was really, really nice of them. And so a lot of things happen, and there's a lot of memories that are associated with. And what I'm really being excited about, my district goes from Coos Bay in the south to 3rd Street in Tillamook in the north, and then over to Sheridan and Falls City. So it is a timber community and a fishing community all the way along. And railroad has really been important to all of them. And so you've now got a railroad group that's doing it up in Garibaldi, and you've got the little line they've got there. You've got here, Coos Bay just a few years ago started. I was a high school principal, and one of our teachers that does our welding and stuff has gone down and been part of the new railroad museum that they're pointing right on 101 there. And there's these people who railroad is their thing. And they come and go, and they come all over. This is becoming one of the big movers of tourism in our communities because they can go from one to the other, spend a night or two, get to view some of the things that you don't get to see other places anymore. It's exciting to have this place here, and the mills have consistently been the ones that helped us. GP, Weyerhaeuser, others have donated a lot of this equipment that have allowed the history to be told over and over again. And I'm really excited about watching that. We had an old Northern Pacific engine in Port Angeles that was out in this middle of the highway, basically, and kids got to go on it and climb all over it and pull levers and stuff until somebody fell off, got hurt, and then they put a fence around it. But I was there before. They didn't care when we fell. The newer kids, they worried about it a little more. But it's that opportunity to understand what it was like. And when I used to be a kid going through the Olympics, I used to camp and fish up in the Olympics all the time. There are these places where there were these ravines, and you think, how did anybody even get in here? And then there's this trestle, like a piece of artwork that you would never imagine that people would have built from the ground up, and then have these trains going all through these places and delivering them. So understanding how all the people that have worked in to make it a value to all of us, and to extract those big trees and get them out of here is something that's just amazing to behold. And I really appreciate the fact that we've got partners like Georgia Pacific. We have a Georgia Pacific mill also in Coos Bay. Ours is lumber. Here it's the container board. I worked at a mill to get through college at Rainier, IT&T. It was a chemical cellulose pulp mill, so we made pulp a lot like they do here. It's amazing to me that we still have that history. It's still part of who we are, and now we will share that because there are dedicated volunteers that are going to make this available to the next generations to understand what they went through. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to be here to talk about it and just to think about it. And you guys have one of the greatest, because it's so easy to see everything here. Other places, they hide them around here. You don't know exactly where things are. This has been perfect, and I come to Toledo more often than not because there's a little union deal up here, and those guys want to talk to me since I was an old IWWPPW worker. And so it has been a real honor to get to know the people here in Toledo, to watch this happen, and to recognize the pride in these people wearing these blue vests that make this available to the next generation of us. And I just thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. U.S. Representative Kurt Schrader was intending to attend today but had to return to Washington, D.C., and he has provided the following letter, which I will speed read. Dear friends, it is with deep regret I'm unable to join you today to celebrate the addition of the historic 45-tonner locomotive to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historic Society. What an excellent reminder of how the railroad shaped both the land and our community. I want to thank both Georgia Pacific for donating this piece of local history, and for the Society for working diligently to preserve these machines and tell their story to the community. In the always changing world that we live in, it is important for us to remember how we came to be where we are now, and the work it took to get here. First purchased in 1951 by C.D. Johnson Lumber Company, then sold to Georgia Pacific Toledo, the 45-tonner supported the local industry that has had a profound impact on our community. With the hard work of the Railroad Society, this engine will serve as an interactive, interpretive display for thousands of residents and visitors. And now, as our community moves ever onward, the 45-tonner will continue to shape it by reminding us where we came from. Thank you again to everyone who has worked to preserve this history, especially YPRHS, its volunteers, Georgia Pacific Toledo. Enjoy this celebration. It is a privilege to serve you in the U.S. Congress. Next, I want to introduce Georgia Pacific Mill Manager James McClure. Mr. McClure is a long-term Georgia Pacific management employee who started in Toledo and recently returned to be the general manager of the Toledo Mill. Former manager Ken Lee was a friend and supporter of the Railroad Museum in a variety of ways. The donation of this locomotive is strong evidence of a continuation of a great relationship with the mill and the community under Mr. McClure's watch. Mr. McClure.
No, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's quite an impressive sight for me to see so many railroad enthusiasts out here. I'm actually in a position where it's kind of nice that it's part of Georgia Pacific. We get to represent the past of Georgia Pacific and in the future and be able to share something that has meant a lot to our business. I look back, we have a shared combined history with Georgia Pacific and the railroad. CJ over here, by the way, has taught me quite a bit just recently over the last few months as we sort of prepared to give this donation to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historical Society. That is a mouthful. Let's say. I was worried about it, get that one wrong. For me, you know, I've learned about the engine, the Lokey, and I remember when I first started at the mill, it was actually a serviceable piece of equipment. And a lot of the folks at the mill had a lot of history of operating this piece of equipment. We want to be a part of the community, and I know that maybe in the past we've not been seen that way necessarily, but for now, moving forward, we really represent the moving forward of Toledo. Our history is combined with your history, and we're very appreciative to be members of this community. It's with a lot of honor that I'd be able to bestow this gift to the Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historical Society. And Ralph, I would like to donate this manual, which is the original operating manual from 1951. We know it's in good hands now. Thank you.
Lloyd? You're not finished yet.
Well, wait a minute. James, didn't you say you were going to read the 7 chapters in there?
Maybe borrow that. I think I have a Xerox copy of that.
As we need.
We're doing the capital.
Georgia Pacific is more than a significant industrial employer in Toledo and Lincoln County. Through its charitable contribution program, it has also supported the community in general and the arts in particular. Last summer, many plein air artists spread throughout the Yaquina River area to paint impressions of the area. Plein air paintings, for those who don't know, are those that are made outside, usually in one sitting. One Portland-based artist, Susan Kuznitsky, visited Toledo for the first time and was fascinated by the mill. She painted several scenes in the mill and even photographed the mill from our bedroom window to make a studio painting when she returned home. She has indicated a desire to return to Toledo this summer for the plein air contest and paint more of the mill, maybe even from inside vantage points. Susan painted a scene that captured the railroad activity serving the mill, and it also captured the second prize in the 2015 plein air competition. Susan wanted to be with us here today, but is actually on her way to Mexico with a vacation with her husband. When we saw the painting and heard her recognition, we thought, what better way to recognize Georgia Pacific? As a small token of our appreciation for the gift of the 45-tonner and the support of Georgia Pacific and many of its individual employees, the goal and work of our museum, please accept this gift.
We're able to obtain this and make it available to you in recognition of your contributions to our society. So hopefully that'll find a good place in the GP complex somewhere. And to us, it's really indicative of the correlation and the cooperation between Georgia Pacific and the railroad itself. Originally, the Georgia Pacific would not be here if it wasn't for the railroad originally, dating way back to historical occurrences. And today the railroad would not be here if it wasn't for Georgia Pacific. So please accept that with our gratitude.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
We also have a plaque that you can hang alongside the painting to help identify the painting for future generations at Georgia Pacific. And the plaque reads, Industrial Strength, which is the title of the work, by Susan Kuznitsky. Second place, 2015 Yaquina River Plein Air Competition. To the management and employees of Georgia Pacific Toledo from Yaquina Pacific Railroad Historic Society, in deep appreciation for your donation of the 45-tonner and support of the Toledo industrial history and culture. February 20, 2016.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all for coming. This concludes the formal. Yes. Okay. Again, this is the end of the formal part of our ceremony today, and thank you all for attending. There are light refreshments behind us. Please take the time to talk to society members in the blue vests. And if you want to see the locomotive up close, please hang on to your children. Watch your step as you board and depart. Thank you again for coming. So we put that on. and I'm gonna go do food service.
Have an interview with OLCC.
Yeah, if not today, later. I have the Battle of the Baton tonight at the Performing Arts Center. I'm the presenter. So I gotta go there and get all dressed up.